In the opening pages of our story, God forms a unit, a team, a collective, to partner together in furthering his mission on this earth. Before cities and governments, and even the church, God established family as a means of advancing his purpose for people. Love is his idea. Marriage is formed in his reflection. Singleness is marked by his purpose. Children are his blessing. Family is his design. No matter your upbringing, your story, your status, or your circumstances, together, may we get a vision for what God has established for our good and his glory.
How we doing? How's everybody doing? Happy Mother's Day. Hey, can we give it up for moms real quick? Yes, just moms in general. Oh, you guys are amazing. Hey, can you do me a favor? If there's any seats next to you, can you just scoot in towards the middle and open up the sides? We still have some families kind of making their way in, just trying to make it easy on them would be wonderful. Hey, so I'm so grateful that you would join us. I know that days like today have all kinds of layers to them. There is a joy, there is a celebration. For so many, it's worthy. For some people, today is a day of grief and pain and hardship. But here's my hope as we sit under the word, that we would just be filled with hope and joy that comes in the gospel, that comes from God's word in days like this. It is worthy of celebrating. And so we're embarking on a journey, working our way through over the next couple of months, looking at what God has established in family, what he has called us to, what he has built, what he has shaped. And so kind of as we start, I want to share a little bit of my journey and my wife's journey that we've been on. This is a picture from this is our second date ever that we were on. We were actually downtown Disney, and we took a little selfie together, and it was just this incredible moment. And 4 months later, we got engaged, so we were moving pretty quickly. You meet a good woman, you're like, all right, I got to lock that down. I got to put a ring on it. 4 months after that, we got married, and so this is us leaving our wedding. For some reason, I had the two most important things in my hands, my iPad and my bride. I don't know why I'm holding an iPad in our wedding pictures, but just roll with it. And then we had this amazing 5-year plan. We were just going to be married without kids for 5 years, and that lasted 5 months. And it's a boy, right? And so we were like, okay, and so a little more than a year, after we were married, we started down this journey, and we were just absolutely thrilled. And Jessie, she did the mom thing where you document the growth of the baby and the belly, and took one every week. And then I did the dad thing where I documented the important moments, like going to Costco. Yep. And I showed her that last night. She's like, "You're gonna show that on Mother's Day?" I'm like, mothers feel that deeply. They're going to like you even more after that. And then this adorable little baby was born to us. And we just he never cried, just smiled like that at all times. And we just love him. It was just, as he got bigger, it's just man, this is a massive, massive joy. And so we're like, let's have another one. And this time it was going to be a girl. And so we started down that journey. But this time my wife was prepared. She's, that first kid, they're like, you need to go on a lot of walks. That's what helps the baby arrive. The baby's coming, okay? And so the second time around, she's like, no, the baby is going to arrive. If we're going on walks, put me in that stroller, right? And Zach's got underneath, and so we would go on walks as a family. And she didn't care. She just had her pizza and ice cream, and she was she was good with it. But we blinked, and it was this is our crew. They grew up, and it just happened so quickly. And so after 9 months of that, we had our little Chipotle burrito, and Nova arrived, and she's just this princess, and we just loved her. And then they grow so quickly. And it literally was we blinked and they were here. And so this is just this journey that we've been on. And here's what I need you to hear, okay? And I run through my whole, our whole life story in 30 seconds because we had no idea what we were doing, right? We didn't embark on this journey with a plan for what our family was going to be like, a strategy for how we were going to raise these kids, a reason for what we were establishing. So we didn't know any of that. But what I need you to understand is that God did. God knew. From the opening pages of the scriptures, God has a plan and he has a strategy and he has a way in which he wants us to walk. And as we work through this series called Established, one, I want us to be established in the way of the Lord. Two, I want us to see that it is God who has established family. It is his blessing that he has poured out. And so what we're going to be doing over the next 2 months is getting a theology of family. A theology of marriage, a theology of singleness, a theology of parenting. And what are we doing? What is the legacy that we are building? Is it a legacy of faith, love, and mission? Because here's what I need you to understand. There's all kinds of messages today about what family, what marriage is. And I want to find what God has for us. I want the ancient paths of his way. This is what he says to us in Jeremiah 6. This is what the Lord says: stand at the crossroads and look. Ask for the ancient paths. Ask where the good way is and walk in it, and you will find rest for your souls. And so that's what we're going to do today. And I'm so grateful that you would join us on a day like this where we're dedicating children. It's worth celebrating. We're going to get an overview, a theological overview of family, and then we're going to dive into the practice of what does it actually look like to build this legacy. So first, what we need to understand is that God established family, okay? And so let me just give you a brief theology of what that looks like. Because in the opening pages of Scripture, we see that God is forming this unit, this collective, this to partner together in furthering his mission. It says in Genesis 1:27, so God created human beings in his own image. In the image of God, he created them, male and female, he created them. Then God blessed them and said, be fruitful and multiply. Fill the earth and subdue it, govern it. That is why a man leaves his father and mother and is united to his wife, and they become one flesh. What I need you to see is from the very beginning, this was God's plan. It's not something he developed later. Before he establishes cities or government or even the church or his Hebrew people, he establishes family. And it is a good thing. And it says he blesses them. What does it mean that he blesses them? It means that everything else that was created, okay, he filled the earth with trees. He filled the seas. He filled the sky with stars. But he did not fill the earth with humans. He gave humans a blessing to be able to be fruitful and multiply and join him in filling the earth. And it's this beautiful blessing that we have. And so I need you to see that God is the one who established family. It's not an afterthought. Second, I want you to understand that God establishes his people through families, okay? So there in the Old Testament, in Genesis 12, we're introduced to this man named Abraham. And a lot of people call him Father Abraham because he had many sons. And I am one of them, and so are you. So let's, church camp flashbacks. Okay, this is what it says, okay? Now the Lord said to Abram, I will make you a great nation, and I will bless you, and I will make your name great so that you will be a blessing. I will bless those who bless you, and him who dishonors you I will curse, and in you all the families of the earth shall be blessed. Okay, so Abraham is the father of God's chosen people for accomplishing his mission of blessing all people on earth. This is the Hebrews, the Israelites. And I need you to see in the Old Testament, Israel is how God establishes his kingdom on earth. It's how he establishes his worship here on earth. It's how he establishes his rule. And how does God establish his people? It's through a family, and then ultimately a family of families. This is how he expands it. And this is not void and null and void in the New Testament. What we see is the New Testament church is this beautiful partnership of families coming together and becoming God's family. And so God establishes his people through families. All right, next, God's way is passed down through families. Deuteronomy 6 says this: these commandments I give you today, are to be on your hearts. Impress them on your children. Talk about them when you sit at home and when you walk along the road, when you lie down and when you get up. And so family is meant to be one of the primary ways that we pass down his teachings, his commandments, his ways. It's how we make disciples. It's one of the primary ways is through families. And we pass down the way of Jesus. Even not a non-Christian leader here, Winston Churchill, who led the UK through World War II. He says this, there is no doubt that it is around the family and the home that all the greatest virtues, the most dominating virtues of humans are created, strengthened, and maintained. And you see this because a majority of your kids' time is being raised in your family, okay? A couple last ones on understanding this theology of family. Next, family, it's fundamental to our faith. It says, but if anyone does not provide for his relatives, and especially for members of his household, he has denied the faith and is worse than an unbeliever. And so Paul is saying, like, no, you don't get to just follow Jesus and forget after your family. The way you love and provide for your family is foundational, fundamental to our faith. It's evidence that we truly follow Jesus. And then later on in 1 Timothy, as he's giving the requirements of what does it mean to be an overseer or an elder or a leader in a church, the way you establish that is by the way you lead your family. And so he's saying, no, it's foundational to our faith. It's not, we don't move on from this idea of like, okay, now in the New Testament, there's the church and family doesn't matter. No, it's still built through, established through, passed on, fundamental to our faith. And lastly, what we need to understand is that family is a good gift from God, you guys. Psalm 127 says, children are a gift from the Lord. They're a reward from him. Children born to a young man are like arrows in a warrior's hands. How joyful is the man whose quiver is full of them. Now, why do we need to understand these things? Why do we need to understand that God created family at the foundation of the world? And it's how he builds his people and moves forward his mission. And it's fundamental to our faith and it's a gift from God. Let me tell you why. Because the message of the world and the enemy is counter to this. One of the greatest evidences for what matters to God is what Satan is attacking. And you better believe that Satan is attacking marriages. You better believe that Satan is attacking children. You better believe that Satan is attacking gender. You better believe that Satan is attacking legacy. He wants to destroy family because society is built upon these families. The church is built through these families and move forward with families. And when the enemy is attacking something, it better be evidence to us that it's something that deeply matters to God. And so we see this and we have to understand this because there's a contradictory message from the world. And it's not always like blatant evil. Sometimes it's subtle things like, man, after 18 years of raising kids, it's your time to clock out. Get them out of the house and check out, right? You know, it becomes this message. Or the world says, if you just work and save for 40 years, you too can spend the worst years of your life alone on a beach somewhere, right? And it paints this picture. But like, I don't know about you. I want a legacy, you guys. I want to live something bigger and more worthy than that. And so the world, it's given us these models. And there's a negative model and a positive model. And let me explain. Here's the negative model. The negative model is that family as burden, right? The dad is always the doofus. He doesn't know what to do. He's like, how do I make lunch? You know, like has no idea. The mom or the wife, she's just a financial burden, right? She's going to spend all your money and she's going to nag you. And the kids are a burden. How do we know these messages? We see them in culture all the time. So somebody wrote this post about dads. It's like, name a TV show in the past 15 years that showed a married couple. The man is painted as the provider, leader, well-respected by the family and peers, and the man is intelligent and has his house in order and cares about his health. All wait. Nobody had any responses. In the last 15, they're like, no. And then somebody was like, wait, I know of one, Breaking Bad. Yeah, that... And I'm like, well, I mean, I guess it kind of works, you know? He's kind of entrepreneurial, like, you know, he establishes all these other elements, okay? And if you're not laughing at that, it's because you're an actual Christian and you don't watch this kind of garbage. So, blessing on you, okay? All right, the picture of mom, right? Here's a picture, I love this picture. Guy standing on the side of Target, not homeless, wife in Target 2+ hours, please help, right? It's this like, oh man, like she's gonna go shop, right? But then the message with kids gets even more intense. This is literally a banner out in Portland. Stop having kids. They launched a website. They put these advertisements all over posters. You can find them all around Portland. Aren't distractions wonderful to have? But why bring someone into a world you have to distract yourself from? That's the message. They're a burden. They're a distraction. If you go to their website right now, this is what it says. There is an unconscionable amount of needless suffering, injustice, and death in the world. Birth serves as the catalyst for it all. Stop bringing kids into this world. You guys, this is the message of the enemy. And God has a contradictory message. You know what it is? Family is a blessing. Children are a blessing from the Lord. But this is the negative model. There's actually a positive model, but that's still like a modern day Western model of family. And so this is, maybe even some of you would be like, this is probably how I think of family. And so I'm not trying to bash this, but I want to provide something deeper. Here's the positive model. Is family as a launching pad for future individual lives. And so we think of it as your family is like this springboard. Your family is this launching pad so that you want to raise your kids in a way that they can go be off independent on their own one day and kind of go do their own thing. Jeremy Pryor, he writes about it like this in his book, Family Revision. He says, the belief underlying the Western philosophy of family is that family should serve the individual more than the individual should serve the family. The typical Western family is often comprised of parents who believe their family exists to provide an effective springboard for the present and future success of each individual family member, often within a well-meaning, loving, secure environment. Again, none of this is speaking negatively, but what I need you to understand is this is a modern way of thinking about family. And it's not a biblical way of thinking about family. It centers around self. Even the parents in this model are like, hey, let's get our kids out of the house so then I can go move forward in my career. I can go advance in the way that I want to advance. And hopefully those kids, they'll make a way for themselves. Hopefully we haven't screwed them up too much and they'll be able to move forward through this. You guys, I want the ancient paths. I want from the foundation of the world what God established, what he built. And so here's what we're going to be working through the next couple months in this series, Establish, this picture, and I'm just going to paint an overview of it today, is building a multi-generational legacy of faith, love, and mission. That's what I want. I want something that lasts beyond me. I want something that points to something greater and something bigger. You should have a long vision of your life and legacy that we are leaving behind for the next generation. We should have something that says, no, these kids are a blessing and they matter and we want them to be following Jesus. And so let me kind of paint this a little bit, okay? So here's how this model looks. It starts with you, okay? And I'm not trying to be limited, but it is Mother's Day, so we're going to start with a female on this one, okay? But here's what I need you to understand. Even when you're single, you are called to leave a legacy of faith, love, and mission. Purpose does not start at marriage. You get that? You don't all of a sudden have a calling once you have children. And I need you to hear that, especially in the church. You know, the early church, it was this foundational partnership between single people and married couples coming together on mission together, okay? And so if you sit here through a series like this and you're like, oh, none of this applies to me, you better believe all of it applies to you. I don't care if you're single, not yet married, you're divorced, you're widowed. No, whatever it is, like you have a calling on your life. But when you get married, if you get married, what I need you to understand is there's not all of a sudden there's this drastic shift. No, guess what you're building? A legacy of faith, love, and mission. That together you would learn to present each other more like Christ. You would serve each other more like Christ. You would love each other more like Christ. You would bring about healing. And there would be a deeper purpose. We're going to look at this much more in depth the next 2 weeks, looking at marriage. But I just need you to understand that. And so when you have kids, it's not all of a sudden this drastic shift where like, okay, now our life is all about our kids. No, your kids are now welcomed into that legacy of faith, that legacy of love, and that legacy of mission. And this is where you start to This is where the shift takes place, okay? It's not just springboarding your kids off to do their own independent things and then you get back to your life. No, what happens in the generational legacy is there becomes this expansion of faith, love, and mission. And your kids move out, and hopefully they move out. Like, that's actually a good thing, right? Okay, if they're 50, still living with you, I feel like you maybe dropped the ball somewhere. I'm just gonna say that, okay? Now, if they're 50, you're living with them, okay, maybe there's a multi-generational thing there, okay? That's different than them living in your basement, playing video games, asking for Cheetos, all right? But you want them to expand out, but as they expand out, they're carrying forth what? That legacy of faith, love, and mission. That you're seeing that. And maybe a majority of your kids, they're gonna end up getting married. And what happens at that point is you come around and you're supporting that marriage partnership. You're like, how can I invest in their marriage and support them? You are not called to be a rift in their marriage. You hear me on that? You're called to be a blessing in their marriage, to come around them, okay? So don't be that stereotypical father-in-law or mother-in-law, right? You know what I'm saying? Like, the biggest fight that my wife and I get in over my mother-in-law is who she loves more. Because there's a lot of evidence that she's on my side, okay? And I love that, and we celebrate that. She is not a burden in our life, she's a blessing in our life. And so we have to play this role where we say, and then guess what? As your kids start having kids and you have grandkids, it's not time to go collect shells on the beach somewhere and be disconnected. Your kids need you, and your grandkids need you to actually come around and support and play a role in that way. Some of them are gonna live close, some of them are gonna live far away, but if you're thinking multi-generationally, you're like, how do I help my grandkids with faith? How do I be someone faithfully praying over them and caring for them? How do I continue this legacy of love, of supporting my kids? And yeah, we absolutely will watch them as you guys go on date night and you want to get away for the weekend, okay? You don't just become nanny. You don't just become full-time childcare and support, but you're invested in it. Do you see this? Like, you're building something bigger than the next 18 years. You're building something that you want to lay a foundation for the generations to come. And this is what we're talking about. This is what it looks like. See, and here's the ultimate goal, and this is the beauty and the joy that we see in Proverbs. It says, the father of a righteous child has great joy. A man who fathers a wise son rejoices in him. May your father and mother rejoice. May she who gave you birth be joyful. You see a common theme in this passage? What is the goal? It's that this would be the greatest joy of your life. Who you've raised and how you've raised them. The legacy that you leave behind, no matter the pain, no matter the hardship that you face. And so let's look at these just briefly, okay? First, a legacy of faith, meaning you raise your kids to love Jesus and his church, that you operate and live in a way that puts Jesus and his church at the center of your family. This is what's so amazing about a day like this, a dedication Sunday. You realize we have over 50 kids being dedicated today, right? Like, if you walk in the hallway, you realize this church's favorite command is be fruitful and multiply. Holy smokes, like, this church is growing leaps and bounds, and the children are a huge part of it. And some of you guys are like having twins, you're like birthing litters. It's just like, it's insane, right? And so, but this is a joy. And a day like this where we come around and we say, no, like, these kids are a gift, and our primary responsibility is to raise them to love Jesus and his church. That we are making a commitment to raise them in the church. Now, you may not live here your whole life. You may not be a part of this church your whole life, but you're saying, I want to raise my kids in a way that they love Jesus and they love the church. Paul, writing to Timothy, who's going to take over the church of Ephesus, and he's training him to be a pastor. And he says, I'm reminded of your sincere faith, which first lived in your grandmother Lois and your mother Eunice, and I am persuaded now lives in you also. How did Timothy become a Christian? A praying grandmother, building a legacy of faith. And so much direction and guidance we have for the church today comes from this praying grandmother who led her daughter to faith and led her grandson to faith. That is a legacy of faith. And so how do we do this? What does it look like? Because you can't force your faith upon your kids, but you can display it, you can model it, and you can invite them into it. This is what we're doing. And so you guys, listen to me. Make church and faith a priority. If you do not, your kids will not. Allow Sundays to be a priority in your life. Pray before bed. Sit and read the scriptures together. On your way out, we have resources like praying books for kids and discipleship books for kids. Grab them, read them with your kids. Read them with your grandkids. Teach them that pattern. At Easter, we did a survey and just asked people, hey, how before you came to church, this church here, were you never a part of a church? Did you grow up going to church and then got disconnected to as an adult? Or were you deeply or loosely connected to another church? 25%, 1 in 4 people in our church grew up in church and then got disconnected and then have now reconnected, oftentimes when they have kids. You know what that shows me and that tells me? Those moments being in part of a church as a child mattered in their life, and they want that for their kids, no matter how wayward they've gone. And we celebrate and we rejoice in that. And here's what I need you to hear, because some of you are like, I didn't come from a spiritually healthy family. And if you didn't come from a spiritually healthy family, I want you to make sure a healthy family comes from you, that you would write a new legacy in these ways. Just a step up in that way. And so make church and faith a priority. Second, participate together. Invite your kids to participate with you in church and faith. It's something we love doing with our kids. Our kids know about what we're doing and things that are going on. And so even one of the things every Saturday night, I come here and it's empty. A few less people in here on Saturday night because it's just me. And I practice through my sermon. I talk through it, and I can't talk out loud. I just because I feel awkward, so I just whisper to myself and do hand motions, right? Okay. And the other night I came home from doing that, and Nova, she's just sitting there drawing. She doesn't even look up. I walked past her. She knew what I was doing. She goes, "Hey, Dad, how was your preach?" Or, how was your preach? And I'm like, no, because I want these kids to love it. We want these kids to love church and to be invited in. So participate with them. Talk to them about what you're learning. Ask them about what they're learning. Build family relationships together. There's this gal who serves in our church. Her name's Cassie. And she often comes on Sunday mornings and helps prepare this space and get this room ready. And her daughter, Sydney, she started inviting her to just come with her and just help her get the church ready and set up. And one of the things they would do is they always put a bottle of water back there for me, okay? In case I start choking, I know there's a bottle of water right back there. And they put my name on it, so I don't get confused, whose is this, And ever since COVID, I'm not really into communal water bottles, so I want mine, right? And so, Cassie was showing Sydney hey, here's what you do, and you just write his name and put it right there. Well, Sydney brought her own creativity and it started writing little notes on the water wall. So it was an Easter one, Happy Easter, the Lord has risen. I was like, oh, that's great. But then she started to take it as a moment of inspiring me. And she was like, you're amazing. You can do anything. And I'm like, I can, Sydney. I appreciate it. And this is one of our ladies said, I believe in you. We all do. So apparently you all do. Okay. And I know that from you now who, right? That's who. But I'm like, I have these sacred memories of these kids running around. And she even came up to me one Sunday, Sydney, she's running. She's like, Jason, guess what? My dad is serving on safety team for the first time today. We're going to be safe, And I was like, this is a legacy of faith. Do you see this? We love these little ones, you guys. We love your kids. I want your kids to grow up with fond memories of church, being no, we were loved here. We had room. They made space for us. We got to run around and put holes in the wall, and they didn't care that much, right? Because this is the next generation, and this is what's happening. And what we have to do is we have to participate together. And let me say something real quick. Because there's a lot of parents and grandparents that show up for a day like this where all these dedications are happening. I just want you to know you're welcome here. Maybe you're involved in church somewhere else or you're not involved in church. And one of the best things you can do is participate with the next generation. And I just want to invite you. Now, if your kid is looking at me right now and they're maybe talk to them over lunch about it, okay? But it can be a sacred thing, At 25, a quarter of our church is 50 plus. And those people in that category are not here because they love the volume of our music or the deep years of wisdom I have to offer them. That generation is here because they want to invest in the next generation. And I want to invite you to participate in that and to be a part of that. It's a sacred thing. And this last thing on legacy of faith, I don't even know if it needs any explanation. Don't be a hypocrite. Nothing will be more damaging to your kids than you being one person on Sunday and a different person at home. They will say, no, this is a bunch of garbage, and my parents don't actually believe it. So a legacy of faith and a legacy of love. And I don't mean simply affection. I mean a loving environment, modeling what you want your kids to be, what you want them to experience. And so how do we leave a legacy of love? A long-term vision. One, you guys be present with your kids. These are the only moments you have. You realize there is going to be a day where your son does not ask you to play catch with him anymore. Stop what you're doing and go play catch. There is nothing more important than that moment. Go ride bikes. Like, your kid wants you to carry them down to their bed at night. Like, there will be a day where you put your kid down and never pick them up again. Like, and you don't know when it is, right? Some of you guys are going to be like, I'm picking up my 18-year-old, like. Be present. And let me just say this, because I'm just as guilty, so I'm saying this to me too. You guys put your phone down and be present with your kids. Like, put it away and be present with your kids. A lot of our kids in this church are reaching the age where they're becoming really involved in sports. And you guys, I love watching parents come and coach their kids and show up at their games. Don't underestimate how precious that is. Like, now, don't put it as a priority over Jesus. Please don't model for your kids that football and baseball is more important than Jesus' community of church. And so set those priorities. But man, I celebrate how involved you guys are. And that one of my most sacred memories is my dad was at every single basketball game I had as a kid. I still hold on to that. It builds a legacy of love being present. Second, parent with the future in mind. And here's what I mean. You need to give your kids more moments of love to build upon than wounds to recover from. And so we think like, no, I have to discipline. And yeah, you do have to discipline. You do have to help train them and teach them. But don't do it in a way that destroys your relationship. Do it in a way, in a context of love. Don't push them to the point of exasperation and anger. This is literally in the scripture. It says, fathers, do not exasperate your children. Instead, bring them up in the training and instruction of the Lord. Like, don't push them to that point. Like, parent with the future in mind. You want your kids to, if you're building a multi-generational legacy, the most important thing is not that they clean their room by 7 a.m. every day. I'm not against these things, but don't break relationship for it. Come around them and know them and spend time together. And third, in building a legacy of love, cultivate a home that is marked by love. May your kids look back and be like, that was my experience. One of my favorite Presbyterian ministers put it like this. His name's Mr. Rogers. Maybe you've heard of him. He says, love is at the root of everything. All learning, all parenting, all relationships, love or the lack of it. And what we hear or see or experience is part of who we become. Are you modeling and allowing your kids to experience such love and grace from you that they are becoming loving, grace-filled people as they get older? That's what we're modeling. I celebrate this when I see it with my kids. We have this hill in our backyard, and it's amazing for sledding. And it's got this kind of mild slope to it. And Nova's coming down, and you usually stop at the fire pit. And then there's a sharp edge, and she just goes off of it. All the way to the blackberry bush. Of course, my wife goes to rescue her. No. This is my wife filming.
I'm the worst mom ever. Oh, she's funny.
Look at her face. My wife is by herself in this moment. Like, she's filming and she's just like, she's fine, right? But I saw that, and you know what I walked away with? Watching Dax, without hesitation, slide down that hill towards the blackberries after her. And I was like, Dax, man, that is love right there, bro. And we celebrate those moments. This is what we're trying to raise. This is what we're trying to build. It's a legacy of love where your kids experience what love is, and then they go live that out in their lives. And lastly, a legacy of mission, that they would have purpose and meaning in their lives. Help your kids cultivate a calling and purpose in life. Your family should have something that you're building with your lives. Donald Miller, this author, he lived in Portland, he lives in Nashville now, and kind of became famous through this book he wrote called Blue Like Jazz, which is kind of all about Portland. And it did so well selling that they wanted to make a movie about it. So he sat down with this crew and these production crew to talk about writing a movie of his life. And they were like, actually, this is not a good story. Because your life does not have a compelling vision. It doesn't have these obstacles to overcome. And so he started to explore what the power of understanding a good story and what it looks like. And so he wrote this book about that journey called 1,000,000 Miles and 1,000 Years. And in it, he tells this story of his friend named Jason that had a 13-year-old daughter. And he's meeting up with Jason, and Jason's just distraught. And he says, man, like, I don't know what to do. My wife and I, we just found pot in Rachel's room. This weed was hidden in her closet, and she's dating this loser boyfriend. He just smells like weed all the time, and he's the kind of guy who gives one-word answers. Yeah, no, whatever, why. Said he hate why the most. Bring her home by 11. Why? And he said they tried everything. Grounding her, putting in more rules, putting a lock on the window, like all these things, everything they tried, nothing. She just spiraled further and further. And Don looks at his friend Jason and he just says, it sounds like she's living a terrible story. And so Jason kind of asks, he's like, what do you mean? Explain that a little bit more. So Don starts to explain how a good story involves a character who wants to do something great and will overcome conflict to get to it. Nothing can get in the way. And so they kind of end the conversation. They have this discussion around. Don runs into Jason a few months later, and he's like, dude, our life is flipping upside down. Everything is changing. And Don's like, what happened? He goes, well, after that conversation, I went home, and I couldn't sleep that night. He's like, I realized I have not given my daughter anything compelling to live for. I have not provided a great story for her and my family, so my daughter is choosing another one where she feels wanted, even if she's just being used by this loser guy. And in the absence of a family story of mission and purpose, she chose one that found risk and adventure and rebellion and independence. And so this dad, the next day when he went to work, he decided, I need to write a better story and invite her into it. And so he starts doing all this research and reading about different organizations. He found this organization that all throughout Southern and Central America would build these orphanages. And so he calls and he's like, here's their story. And he's like, what does it take to participate in building one of these orphanages? And they were like, we can build one of these orphanages for $25,000. And so just in the heat of the moment, like he just like agreed, done, we'll do it. Now he gets done and he's like, yeah, we don't have $25,000. We just took out a second mortgage. We are in debt, like up to our eyeballs. But he gets home and he calls a family meeting. And he sits down with his wife and his daughter. And he did not tell his wife ahead of time, which later he said was a mistake. He realized that's not the best approach, but he starts telling about these orphanages and what it takes to build one and all the ins and outs and all the things. And then he just says like, and I agreed that our family would build one. And his wife and daughter look at him like he's crazy. And they get mad at the financial irresponsibility. And his daughter realizes the financial consequences of what's going to happen and the things that she can't do and the trips they can't take. And so they just get upset. And as they're talking, he's like, maybe I am crazy. And eventually the wife and the daughter get up and they go to their rooms and close the door. And that night he goes in and he sits down with his wife and he kind of tells her the whole backstory in this conversation with Dawn and all the ins and outs. And she listens and then she goes to sleep. And the next day he comes home from work and he's sitting in the kitchen sink and he's washing the dishes. And he says his wife came up to him and just wrapped her arms around him. And he's telling Dawn this story and he's like, Dawn, you don't know how bad this last couple of years have been. I haven't told you the ins and outs. But she pressed her cheek against the back of my neck and she just said, I'm so proud of you. And he's like, she hasn't said anything like that to me in months. It's been years since she's talked to me like that. And he just said, I turned around, I just was like, I'm so sorry for what I've done. I'm so sorry that I didn't tell you. I'm so sorry. She's like, I forgive you, but it doesn't matter because we have an orphanage to build. And he says a few days later, his daughter Rachel comes into their room. And she kind of walks up and she just says, do you think maybe if we're going to help pay for one of these, we can maybe take a trip and go visit one? And they were like, absolutely. And she crawls into their bed and she comes up and she lays in between them like she did when she was a little girl. And she starts talking about how she could take pictures and post them on her blog and her website. And she just starts to dream together. And they just sit and they dream as a family about what it could be like to participate and help these kids in this kind of way. And he looks at Dawn and he goes, Dawn, here's the best part. And a week ago, she broke up with that loser boyfriend. He said she didn't have something compelling to live for in her life, so she just settled for any option that came along. But that's not who she is. She's not the kind of girl who should settle for these loser guys who treat her poorly and lead her down a bad path and just want to use her. She is a hero on a mission. And a hero on a mission lives a compelling life. And here's what I need us to understand. If your family does not find themselves living in a great story, they will be captured by a lesser one. And so we are called to build a legacy, you guys, a legacy of faith, love, and mission, that there would be purpose and that there would be meaning. And you may be sitting here and you're like, man, I haven't lived this way. Well, let today be the day. Let today be the day that you're like, we are writing a new story. But I come from brokenness and addiction and pain and suffering. Guess what? A new legacy is coming from you. A new generation is coming from you. And days like today, like dedication, all these families are getting up and they're saying, no, these kids are a gift from the Lord and we are dedicating them unto his service, unto his way, unto his truth. And here's what I want to say. There's a bunch of you who came today not planning on dedicating a kid. But today is going to be the day. And you're like, no, I actually need to do this. And I'm going to dismiss the families in a minute here to go get their kids to dedicate them. And I want you to just get up and I want you to go get your kid. Some of you guys are like, my kid's a little big. I don't care. Hold him up, right? But make a public commitment. This is for you and the Lord in front of your church, people who love you, that we want to come around you and support you in this way, that you're saying, no, a new story is being written with my family. Lord, we pray that you would write stories of love, write legacies of faith being passed on from generation to generation, that we would not listen to the message of the world, the message even of Western civilization that says it's all about the individual, but there would be multi-generational legacies built in and through your church unto your glory. I pray today would be a beginning of healing, the beginning of new stories being written, the beginning of hope for so many. Lord, would this all be unto your praise and unto your glory in the name and nature of your Son, Jesus, and all God's people said, amen.